Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm actually not sure what time this will air. Probably in the morning. Welcome to the Thrive Tribe Saturday Shout Out. I'm super excited today to have my very good friend, my Trojan doctoral buddy, Saturday. We'll talk about all that. My fellow Trojan, Bob Nelson here. So welcome, Bob. How are you?
I am stoked to be on your show. It's really cool to be part of the Thrive Tribe. And this gives me legitimacy in the SEL world. So glad to be here.
Well, thank you.
And that's what I lacked. This is what I needed.
I want you to know that Bob and I met through USC, and we spent 3 years of Saturdays together from like 7 in the morning till noon, basically. Learning and laughing and drinking coffee on my part, not on Bob's, but lots of coffee on my end. And, what they say that when you're in a trauma, it brings you close together.
That's exactly right.
That the trauma of getting our doctorates together brought us closely together. So
truthfully, let's be totally straight. If it hadn't been for all my colleagues like yourself on Saturdays, I would not have finished my doctorate. I always pride myself on being really good in school, but I would not have made it without my close friends there, and you're a big part of the reason that I'm there. So bless you.
Well,
that was more than mere happenstance that we were in space together there, I think.
But you did have some big distractions. So you got a new job. We'll talk about that in a minute, right in the middle of it. But tell us a little bit about you personally, Bob.
So I'm a dad. I'm the dad of 74,000 students, but moreover, I'm the dad of 7 kids in my home too. And they range in age from 22 down to 2-year-old twins because I'm an incredibly good life planner. I got all that dialed in. But no, actually I have 3 biological kids that are 22, 19, and 19. One of those has spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. And then we were foster parents and fostered about 8 kids in our community. And I ended up adopting 4 of those, and they are respectively 6, 4, 2, and 2. So it's crazy. Our family motto is #crazy but fun. I'm just your run-of-the-mill diabetic ukulele playing Mormon. I don't know. I mean, that's probably a big group of those people.
So wait, Bob, before we move into your job, I want to just say, do you want to describe the vehicle that you used to drive?
Oh yeah, we have a family. It was kind of funny. We went to Hawaii a couple weeks ago, which was one of the best things we've done in recent memory. But as I was picking my family up, I realized I'm driving a Ford Transit, and I'm in traffic in the Oakland airport with all of these other hotel shuttles, and that's exactly what our family car is. It seats 15 people, and I'm like, it's cool when the airport shuttle finally arrives to pick up your family. It's a little embarrassing when that's your daily driver. Right? That is our car. So if somebody's like, do you need a special license for that? And you actually don't. But yeah, we have a family van that seats 15 people. So I tell my wife, don't get any ideas. We're done. So you always want to be 49 and have 4 kids, age 6 and under. Super, super smart life planning.
They keep you young, Bob. They keep you young.
Well, I will say that's true. Yeah, that much is fact.
So when you're not hanging out with your 7 kids, what do you do as your day job?
So remarkably, I am the superintendent of California's 4th largest school district, Fresno Unified, which is 74,000 students strong, preschool through adult school. It's a pretty heavy lift. Super proud of the fact that I'm a Fresno product. I was here. I taught elementary school in 2 different schools. I was a vice principal, a principal here. I worked in human resources. Then I went up where we live. I live in Yosemite Lakes Park area, eastern Madera County. And I was a superintendent there for about 3 years in a really small school district, one high school district called Unified, which was awesome. And then I came back to work as a previous Superintendent Hanson. I came to work as his chief of staff. And then crazily enough, I became the interim superintendent, and I'm the superintendent serving here. What's really cool is I'm the first internal person in 30 years plus, 3 decades, to actually make this gig happen. So I feel a lot of pride with that, but I feel a lot of responsibility too, because we have to show that we can raise our own. And Fresno's a pretty heavy lift. We're the most impoverished major urban across the United States. One of the 70 largest districts in the nation. We're part of 4, so we're there with LA Unified, San Diego, Long Beach, us. And so it's a heavy gig, but it's a really, really wonderful opportunity to serve.
How do you think that? Ooh, sound.
I don't know. I don't have the expensive microphone or the.
I think my expensive microphone sometimes does not work because it's not super expensive.
It sure looks like $1 million.
It looks like it is, doesn't it? And it's teal. That's why I really liked it.
I'm down with that too.
How do you think that coming from Fresno Unified, being a product of teaching there and serving as administrator there, how does that give you different insight as a superintendent that others may not?
Yeah, I think the Valley's really a different place. I think when people think of California, particularly folks that are not from California, if you think of Southern California or the Bay Area, like Fresno is just a very, very different vibe, right? It's really ag focused. It's incredibly diverse. We're 70% Latino, roughly each Caucasian, African American, and Southeast Asian, primarily Hmong and Lao people. And it's kind of its own unique reality. A very impoverished community. 89% of our students actually meet the federal definition of poverty. So like under the local control funding formula, Fresno is a huge beneficiary of that because the vast majority of our kids are impoverished second language learners. We have a high percentage of foster youth. And so the lift is heavy. So I think having somebody, come from outside, it's hard. I came in the middle of like this crazy labor strife too, where we had 18 months of not having a contract and we're in the lead up to the strike. And so being an internal candidate, I think helped me a lot, right? Because one of the things that happens in the political environment, like narratives, they create stories about different people. I'm kind of hard to tell stories on because like every third person, like I taught with them. So you can say, oh, that guy's just like, knucklehead administrator, typical jerk. And then they're like, no, I taught with that guy. So that actually helped me a lot. It's it gives you some credibility that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? Nobody can ever say that I didn't pay my dues. I haven't been here. I was, I've been like 6 different sites here. I've been in almost every high school pyramid, so I know all of our trustees. And so, that helps a lot. Actually, I think sometimes we do that. We'll like go with the known person, even if we, should be maybe taking a gamble on somebody that we don't know. But in this case, obviously people felt like, hey, this is at least a gamble on a guy that we know something about. But it's still a work in progress for me. Being the superintendent is an interesting journey. It's a very, very difficult type of job. You have to really be able to weather the political storms of that, but still try to keep the focus on kids. It's fascinating how much you have to work to like keep kids a central focus in a school district. I mean, that seems kind of surprising, but that is the reality.
Let me ask you this. I'm sure that you have many missions as the superintendent, but like what are one or two areas where before you leave, you want to make your impact in, one or two particular areas of passion for you? What would those be?
So hopefully when I leave, they'll be like, yeah, that was the culture guy, right? That was about bringing positive culture to our district and about, I firmly believe that if you can create an environment where everybody really loves coming to work every day and really enjoys being with one another, that what your kids will accomplish will be just go through the stratosphere, right? I mean, I firmly believe that the same principle is true, like of parenting, that if you just tell your kids over and over and over that they're an absolute rock star badass, then eventually they become exactly what you profess they were all the while. And the more you say it, the more likely it is that you speak it into action. I'm trying to figure out if you can do that with an organizational culture. Can you just create an environment where people are so happy and collaborative and really want to work, and that's legitimate. It's not like a hustle. It's something that they are really, because for a long time we've said Fresno Unified is the employer of choice. Well, we're the biggest employer from Bakersfield to Sacramento. That much is true. But I don't know if anybody's beaten down their door to get here because I'm not sure people, when you say Fresno, like your Thrive Tribe people are going to be like, Fresno, that's an armpit. Like until that mentality changes and people do not speak in pejorative terms about Fresno, like my work has never done. So if you want to know what my passion is, it's that. And don't jam us because we grow your food. Like 75% of the foodstuffs across the state of California are grown right here locally. But, I'm just trying to change a situation where we become a destination that people want to go, that people see this as a place where they really want to go. Thrive Tribe is perfectly suitable, right? I want people to thrive while they're here at work. And so I'm working on that every day. It's hard. I mean, that's a heavy lift, right? You got to create a situation where people feel a sense of buy-in. My predecessor did some really tough work. Like a decade ago, no 2 third grades were the same in our district. And parents had to like pick and choose like what teachers they wanted along the journey to get their kids where they wanted them to go. And there's still a lot of that that occurs in education. But so he homogenized the system to a great degree. So like kind of eliminated some of the worst performance, right? To like bring everybody up to a certain level. But that came at a price because that was really top down, really heavy handed, very directive. And it kind of cut the attribution out from people. Like people stopped believing that that was their value and that was their work and that their voice mattered. And so I'm trying to change all that. So how can I create an environment where people's voices are actually, substantive, that they feel like they're important and they feel like they're welcome and they're valued, and really listen to the greatest degree possible, knowing that you still got to have some tights and you still got to have some top down stuff, but that the goal is to have like every player in that conversation fully own what they're trying to do on behalf of everything, right? If I can do that, I will have accomplished anything. And that's what I'm hoping to leave behind.
Well, and weird. What is that?
I don't know. Sorry, and I'm the worst, man. You ask me a question and I'll talk for like 15 minutes. So.
No, I just feel like it's okay. I'm not a robot right now. Okay. So I'm just thinking, part of my research in my dissertation was on teacher well-being. And when I was exploring well-being, I discovered it's so close to employee engagement, right? And so all the things that you're talking about, that you want your employees to want to come to work, to feel like they have a voice, that's so connected with PERMA, which is the framework that we look at in the Thrive Tribe for well-being. So positive emotions, they feel kindness, empathy, gratitude. They're engaged with work, relationships, which you spoke about, right? They feel connected to people. They have meaning and purpose, and they have a sense of accomplishment or achievement and the opportunity to use their strengths. So those elements of well-being are so interconnected with employee engagement. And the more we can just focus on that, I think, in education, I don't think we do a lot. Business world is more into that than we are, but I admire that is really a focus of yours.
Wouldn't that be awesome, right? If we could create a major urban school district environment where those 5 principles are like actively practiced and taught every day and are kind of like seminal to everybody's daily interaction. I think then, we would be a place that people wanted to come. And I think that's not directly analogous to student performance, but I kind of call BS on that, because if the adults are happy in the system, you can only help but see your kids just absolutely thrive. They're going to tear it up, because happy people bring their best selves to work every day, and they go so far above and beyond what's expected. And one of the things I'm pushing is too, like, I need both sides of the coin. Like, I need people that are like pedagogically sound, like they understand the science of teaching super well, and they love their subject matter, they love their student age or whatever. But 2, they have a high degree of SEL, they have a high emotional intelligence, and they're really loving, passionate, caring individuals. I don't need really nice people that can't teach, and I don't need really good teachers who are jerks. Like, I don't need either one of those. And that's like this fake dichotomy that like we use in education a lot. Oh, they're really instructional, or, oh, they're really relational. Like, I don't need the instructional person who's not relational, nor do I need the relational person who can't teach their way out of a paper bag. You got to have you got to be the full package. And it's actually easier for me probably to teach the instructional side than it is the relationality side. You got to really want to be invested in a relationship. I mean, that's my driver. That just happens to be like my thing. If you look at StrengthsFinder, like one of mine is winning over others. It's just like connectivity to people that gives me energy. I mean, or people probably know, like, I fancy myself the 5th Kardashian online. Like, I'm totally out on social media in weird ways, but probably
actually
different ways befitting a major urban superintendent.
Let me ask you a question about that. So I think you and I share a willingness and a desire to be transparent and sometimes vulnerable on social media. There was a point in my life where everyone thought I was happy all of the time, because that's all they saw. And a few years ago, I decided, I'm going to be real and authentic, and I'm not happy all the time, right? I have moments of sadness and pain and discouragement, just like any human being. And so you are very authentic and transparent in your social media. Why do you feel like that's important?
It's difficult. I think a lot of people, when you're the leader, like, some people expect you to be kind of Teflon, right? And I think, one, that's a hustle, right? Because nobody's really that Teflon. Now, I won't say I don't paint some kind of sanitized picture, because, like, I'm not showing you pictures of my living room with that many kids and how much stuff we have, like the total number of Hot Wheels in front of my TV set right now. Like, I'm not showing you that, right? But I will say, like, I'm probably a little more real That's been hard about kind of coming to grips with being a public figure and how real can you be, because people have a certain level of expectation of their leader and you have to kind of fit within a box for them. Part of me kind of is irreverent and I kind of delight in like jabbing at that. Like I don't like people boxing me up and telling me how. There's definitely a way a superintendent should be. They behave in a certain way. They dress in a certain way. Like I'm not sure how many tie wearers you've had on the Thrive Tribe, but I'm not sure. Like I don't know really. But the reality is like there's a certain box that you have to stay in to some degree. And I will say I've kind of dialed it back. Like when I was in Shawanaki, I was a lot more authentically myself. But I think people at least know like one of my character traits is that I'm going to be authentically me. And that's good, bad, and otherwise. I think when I was in human resources, it's really hard to get fired from an institution of education. Like you got to be a dumpster on fire. Like if you like get it together, then we will like. It's different than the private sector. In the public sector, it's pretty hard to lose your gig in a teaching environment. But the people that do actually get fired in our situation is they're just not self-reflective. Like you say, these are the things that you're engaged in. They're not really productive. These are the things that are not helping kids, and they're just pissed. Jamming them, right? So I think to the greatest degree we can be vulnerable and look at our own stuff and really process and get better. I mean, that's really what makes life happen, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get overly like spiritual about it, but I think that's kind of the journey we're on here in life is just to be better. Like my goal is to be better tomorrow than I was today. And I'm not really competing with other superintendents. I'm not really competing with the union president or any of that stuff. I'm really competing with my own ability to just serve and do better. But yeah, I mean, vulnerability is dangerous in the role that I'm in because it is pretty political. That's the reality. And you give people kind of ammunition potentially to use it against you. But the reality is, like being a superintendent of Fresno Unified is not the end all be all of my entire existence as a human being. I love it. Truthfully, it's the best job I've ever had. It's also the most challenging job I've ever had, bar none, and not always fun. That's a really understatement too, right? But everybody's going to get a run. You're going to get a run in whatever gig you're in. It's going to be of whatever length it is, and you make the most of it while you're there, and then you trust that there's some other plan. So at the end of this, I'll go and do something else, right? The bottom line is I've treated people well enough, I think, that there'll be something else for me. And I'm not arrogant about it. I could certainly go and be there are 32 superintendencies in Fresno County alone. Right? There's nothing stopping me from going to Selma or Sanger or Fowler or wherever. It's not all about Fresno. And there's stuff you can learn every place you can go. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard. People really judge how vulnerable one is on social media. But, it's interesting because we love when people are straight with us and when they, like, shoot it straight and when they speak from the heart. We love that. But we're often, like, repulsed by our own ability to be vulnerable in space. So I get a lot of mileage out of being authentically myself, right? That's, like, the highest praise anybody can give is, like, no, that guy's a straight shooter or that guy, is a real deal. He never pretends to be anybody other than who he is. So hopefully that's what they say.
I feel the same way. I know that, when I do a workshop and I read the feedback forms and they'll say all kinds of good things and maybe some suggestions for improvement. But one of the things that stands out to me that means a lot to me is when people say, we really appreciate that you were real or authentic, or, we could tell you were you, and I appreciate that. All right, so now comes the time where I'm going to ask you some random questions. These are little cards. They come from Table Topics book on Table Topics little thing on happiness. And so I'm going to read you a little sentence or blurb that talks about what can boost your happiness, and then there's a question. So the first one says, create a personal mission statement. The question is, what quote do you live by? So is there one quote that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I don't want to get overly religious, but there's actually a passage of scripture, an LDS scripture that says, I, the Lord, will forgive whom I choose to forgive, but of you is required to forgive all men. And so in other words, like, I just try not to stand in judgment. It's not my place, right? I'm often in a position where I could do that, or I just try to take people, all of them, where they come, right? Some of the things like, this is fairly vulnerable, but we'll just go there anyway. Why not? This is social media. One of the weird connectivity places is between the LDS Church and LGBT people, and there's friction there because the church partially backed Prop 8, which is anti-LGBT. And And so that part's really hard. So we grapple with that all the time. And I have wonderful LGBT people that I work with every day that are kind of just watching to see how I'm going to operate in that regard. And that's how that quote plays its role for me, because my job is not to stand in any of that judgment, just to take people where they come and love and appreciate them and be respectful and not project my stuff onto people. And that does bring me happiness, but that also makes you stand out too, because people are like, oh, you don't speak for us when you say it. One of the things in this role is like everybody tries to manipulate senior leaders in order to like push them. And so I try to never get caught up in that. Like, don't get caught up in anybody's agenda. Like, I don't wear buttons or any of that stuff. People are like, what, you're not down with the cause or whatever? Like, if there was a balding diabetic button, like foster parent button, like I wouldn't wear that either. Like, because I don't want to be part of anybody's hustle, nor do I really want to find ways that I'm trying to push myself away from people. We're really trying to do good things for Black kids in our district. If I'm Black and I'm male and I'm special ed, and Joelle knows, like, I'm 3 times more likely to be suspended or expelled in Fresno than any of my colleagues. It's just the brass tacks reality. Worse yet, I'm 11 times more likely to be suspended to the degree that it changes my placement in a special ed setting, right? You can like that or you can hate it, but, well, you better hate it because it sucks. And it's fundamental about how we interact with people. Something is horribly wrong there, right? I'm not Black, clearly, right? I know my limitations and I'm not necessarily the spokesman for African-American students in our community, but I have to engage in that conversation deeply and try to make it right on behalf of the kids of the city. So, right, I mean, my job is to just be fully present for everybody all the time. And if I can do that to the greatest degree of my ability to do that, the better off I think I'll be as a leader and as kind of a human being, right? In the end, there'll be more that I can look back on and find value in. But that is like a personal mission statement. Like, how do I bring, does all really mean all, right? Like, with all due respect, like, I got a kid with cerebral palsy. So now you are in my affinity group. Special ed kids are still in those 3 rooms out by the back fence, right? We don't do that with Black kids. We don't do that with Asian kids, but we don't think anything about sticking all the autistic kids out by the back fence where their rooms are not in the center of campus. We don't think anything about it. And then when we think, well, they're not meeting grade level standards, well, what do you expect? Like, we say that. You would never say that about loud kids. What do you expect? Like, so those things still exist. We just got to deal with our own stuff and bring everybody along. Does all mean all, right? All should mean all. If it doesn't,
I love that you're passionate about that, because it's and I believe that that's something that you will leave with your district too, the impact that you'll make. All right, here's another one. Another way to happiness is to figure out your strengths and find ways to use them. What are your 3 top strengths?
I think fundamentally everybody would say, like, I'm super positive. Like, I don't get bogged down on stuff. I'm deeply relational too. And I think this sounds a little arrogant, but I sense of humor can help too, right? Like, I don't take myself too seriously, right? And I hang out with people that make me laugh too. And schools are like super funny. Like, and having little kids is like super funny. Like, there's just a ton of stuff that happens every day, which is totally hilarious. And if you can stop and like take stock of that, then, you know, you'll be a lot happier person too. Yeah, I, you know, do a lot of silly things. I play music. I do, you know, play the ukulele. I do a bunch of stuff. So.
We are going to have him play a little ukulele before we go out. All right.
Because that's what people are waiting to see in the time drive.
They are. That's
more ukulele playing.
That's the hook that I'm, you know, getting them to continue watching for the ukulele.
Gotcha.
So fame won't make you happy. The question is, if you could be famous for anything, what would you choose?
You know what's crazy is this job to some degree has some small measure of fame. It's like the beginning of that. Like, it's always shocking. Like, people stop me in Target now. It's like, oh gosh, like it's never ceases to be jarring. I want them to remember that I would, like what I said earlier, like, that was the culture guy. That guy believed in the validity of every kid, and that guy loved without limits, right? That was one of the more loving people. That guy led with his heart.
Love without limits. I like it.
Right? Like, that guy led heart first, and he was unashamed of it and unabashed about it. And he lived a life that indicated that he valued other people and served them, right? That would be the ultimate.
Beautiful. Okay, last one of these. There goes my weird thing. Take regular vacations. I know you just took a vacation to Hawaii. The question is, though, what locations are on your bucket list? So what are one or two spots that you haven't been to that you want to go to?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, travel is really, really key. It's super good to be in other spaces, which gets your head in a different place. I want to go to like French Polynesia. Now that I'm kind of like down with this island vibe thing, like I want to like double down and like try Tahiti or I don't know where. I'm not sure all the places you can go there. Um, I'm a mountain guy too, so I'd love to like go to Denali National Park or I've never been to the Orient. Like one of my brothers-in-law lives in Japan. I'd love to go check that out. South Africa, go see penguins. I mean, no, there's a million places. Madagascar, so I can see King Julian and the lemurs there. I mean, I don't know, like anywhere. I'm down for travel, any place, any day, all the time.
Love it. All right. Oh my goodness. Don't overthink this, but if you could teach the world one thing, what would you teach the world?
I think I would start by just saying, hey, you're enough. Like get out of your own head. Like just be cool being you. If I could just give everybody like, and this is a little gender specific, so if I'm crossing a line, I apologize. But like, I just use my wife as an example. Like, I think probably the greatest gift is like, if there was ever a mirror that I could use that would like hold up a reflection of what I actually see in you, as opposed to maybe whatever twisted version of yourself you see when you look in the mirror, like I would do that. Right? Like the vast majority of people in our lives just need to be okay with the fact that they're enough. Like you're enough. It's okay. And yeah, you got some bruises and some bumps and some scars and some ugliness, but that's beautiful too, right? I mean, perfection in and of itself is a hustle, right? I mean, part of the perfection comes with experiencing the bumps and bruises over time. So if there's any way to like create a situation whereby everybody can kind of, it's hard to love others if you don't start by loving you, right? If you don't have a good love on yourself, if you don't find value in your own validity, then it's hard to extend that to the world. And if you seek validation in others, that's a hustle too. Like, you know, because invariably everybody's got their own drama. So you got to find your own center and then leverage that to go serve. And when you feel like you're like the most jammed, just go out and help somebody else, right? And then you'll realize like now you have it pretty good, right? And what we tend to do when things are bad is we hunker down and we like try to protect ourselves, and that's probably the diametric opposite of what we should be doing, which is like opening our hearts and getting out there and trying to serve other people and just being totally present with who we are and then how we can help.
And it's amazing how much helping others can boost your own well-being. I know when I'm feeling down, that giving to others instantly lifts me back up.
Yep.
All right. So now you have one question for me. If I don't know what it is, it scares me because it's coming from Bob Nelson. You know, is there anything that you want to know, Bob?
No, well, I won't probe into your deepest, hard-hitting psyche.
Okay, good.
I would say knowing what you know, I mean, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that when you worked as an alt ed principal, like you refused to take no for an answer, right? And you like stood up for those kids in ways that they just needed somebody to, you know, to go to bat for them. Like if I was going to ask you, if you could do one thing to kind of improve the total ability of school people to connect with the kids that they serve every day, like what would you tell them? What's the seminal message that you think every educator needs to hear in terms of deeply connecting with the kids that they serve?
Well, that's a multi-layered, deep question. But
or what'd you eat for breakfast? You can pick either. No, sorry.
I haven't eaten breakfast yet, so that one's easy. I would say the relationship is huge. So I would say know who your kids are and be willing to show them who you are. Because unless you're willing to express when you have struggled and succeeded, or struggled and failed and learned, you're not teaching them that they can struggle and learn. So I was always really open and honest with my kids about my own struggles and how I overcame them or how I learned from failure. And I think that that's a huge model. The other piece is that I get really kind of about is I think when we have low expectations, and you alluded to this earlier, when we say to kids, oh, don't worry about that. You don't need, I'll do it for you, or that's for other kids. You can do this one. When we lower our expectations for kids, they feel it, they know it. And the message is that you can't do it. And I think in alt ed in particular, it's like, oh, you're an alt ed, so here's a packet because you can't do this other work. When in fact, they might be able to do extensive work, but they just need someone to engage them in a way that makes learning interesting and relative to them. So I would say finding ways to engage students with their passion and purpose and being real is how you connect with kids.
That's awesome. All right, so hold me accountable. I'm gonna try to do something different for our alt ed kids because I agree with you. I think people already got a narrative about them that's not productive for them in their lives.
Yeah, and then we just kind of worry about just graduating them rather than engaging them so that they have something else after graduation.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're ready. I would love to just close this out with a little tune, whatever you want to play.
All right.
For
I'm
those
going to
of
be
you
a little bit
in the
quiet because they're doing interviews right next door, but we'll see.
I will share some links in the comments to Bob's YouTube channel, and then you can see some other songs, but he'll grace us with a little bit.
Oh yeah, we just went to Hawaii, so I just picked this up. This is a baritone ukulele. There are 4 sizes of ukulele, but this is the largest one. It's the most like a guitar, and it's actually tuned like a guitar. So the fingering is a little bit different. So it's taking, but I play guitar a little bit too, so it's super lovely. But we'll see where.
Yay! I think we should dub you the singing superintendent.
Yeah, that's one of the hashtags.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. The Thrive Tribe, reach out to Bob, give him some love and comments, ask us questions, and thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, Fresno Unified. Come check out the YouTube channel. Connect with me. Any service I can be to anybody in the Thrive Tribe. If I can be of value to you or you need my help in any way, let me help.
Thank you.
You're right. I love you. Thank you for being a good friend, for carrying me.
Thanks, Bob. For the rest of you, I want to interview you too. So make sure that you send me a message or I'll be hunting you down to set up an interview for the Thrive Tribe. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Peace out. Bye.